because the record button's not red. I don't know why I look for the red button.
Oh yeah, I got your message now. I got it. There we are. Okay.
All right. So Tyler, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you.
And CK is also back with us today. How you been, girl?
I'm good. Thanks for having me again.
Well, it's good we could finally make another one work. I know you're awful busy over there at Vence.
It's nuts. Last time I was actually going to be at Maggie and Jeremiah's call, and we got a flat tire.
Oh, that's a bummer.
I was in 100-degree weather, guys. It was awful.
Well, funny story. Just before we were sitting down to do this, like in real time, 20 minutes ago, I got a phone call that there was maybe a little bit of a fire about 6 or 7 miles west of the ranch. So I tore out of the studio and jumped in my Jeep and ran up the top of the hill and looked, and I didn't see any smoke, and looked at the weather forecast and decided that I could probably come back down here for another hour or two and do some podcasting. So here we are. So Tyler, you reached out to me on, I believe it was through my Ranching Reboot Facebook page, and sent me a message. And you've got an event coming up that you want to talk about. So why don't you tell us what that event is?
Yeah, so September 10th this year, we're putting on the 3rd annual Rendezvous City Beef Roundup. And it is a steak tasting competition. We get 10 ranches from around Wyoming that are all doing some sort of direct marketing. And we have them put in, this year they're going to put in 8 pounds of New York strip. We sell tickets to our VIP dinner, and we serve each one of our VIP guests 1 ounce serving from each of the 10 different ranches. And we cook it all the same. Obviously, we keep it separate. And you get 1 vote as to what you think is the best beef in Wyoming. And this year we also have an open division. We had so many producers get a hold of us after the fact 2 years ago, after we did the first one, that we said, you know, we got to do something. We want to keep Wyoming producers as the star of the show, but we also want, so many of these producers said, you know, we can't get anything similar to this going in our neck of the woods. How can we join in? We want to see, you know, just the fact that we judge everything strictly on taste. And we said, you know, our planning committee, we said, you know, we've got to come up with an open division. So this year is our second best beef in the West competition as well. And so we do a little different format there. But yeah, we take everything from Wagyu to grass finished Coriani, which I know will be right up your alley. And we put them all together and we kind of see what people think, what they're looking for in flavor.
Okay. Oh, so it's just, you get a vote 1 out of 10 after eating a 1 ounce portion of which one was your favorite. And I can kind of see that, you know, where you're not trying to do a bunch of different scoring and, you know, tabulate a tenderness and aroma and this, that, and the other. It's just, I liked this one best.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to have probably a little bit different reason, but I think probably at the end of the day, those reasons don't matter if you have a clear-cut winner.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting last year. The people that won it were Coriani's, Coriani Longhorn Cross out of Sundance, Wyoming. Really cool people. They were there the first year and they didn't get a lot of votes. And then here they come back the second year, and I was second to them by 1 vote last year. So, you know, it's cool. I think there's that little part of kind of when your steak is cooked, we serve it in 2 flights. So we try and make it stay as warm as possible, as even as possible. It's amazing to see how this kitchen staff at CWC is able to get 80 pounds of the exact same cut cooked evenly from one end to the other. I mean, they do an amazing job. There's very few places in the world that I think could accomplish that. And they get it all out within minutes of each other. So It's a pretty fascinating process to watch, but I think it depends a little bit on who's in the crowd. I think it depends a little bit as to when they get your particular piece of meat, whether they're a little fuller or not.
Yeah.
But I was surprised the first year. I thought it would be kind of a cheeky thing, you know, and kind of a fun night out for people. Ultimately, I wanted it to be something for the ranchers to hang their hat on. You know, we all say, yeah, you know, or you get a customer that buys directly from you, and they say, oh, you have the best beef. Or we always advertise on our Facebooks or whatever that, you know, we sell the best beef in Wyoming. This was meant to be something for them to actually hang their hat on and say, we were voted the best beef in Wyoming. And like I said, I thought it was going to be kind of a cheeky thing, and people would kind of, oh yeah, I like this one. No, I didn't like that one. Oh, this is fun. Let's have another drink. People were dead serious. They were taking notes. They were cutting their 1 ounce serving into 3 pieces. They take a bite, write a note, you know, and we give them a little wine tasting type card. And it has some prompts as to tenderness, smell, some of those kind of more cerebral things that they can grasp. But they were asking for extra cards so they could make more notes about a 1 ounce serving. So it was really cool for me to see that people actually took it that serious.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So one of the questions I had was, you know, who's doing the cooking? It's obviously kitchen staff, and I can't even, like, it just kind of boggles the mind that they're going to put 80 pounds of meat out cooked consistently the same in 1 ounce portions in like 15 to 20 minutes. Like that's some serious logistic exercise.
Yeah, that that was part of the challenge in trying to find a place to do this. You know, we're literally in the middle of Wyoming. We have very few large establishments like that. And so I ended up going to Central Wyoming College, and we've built a great relationship with them. They're amazing hosts, and they give us so many resources to pull this off. But that was one of the things in shopping around for a place to do this, was where's even a place that has that big of a cooking surface, much less the staff that can manage it. You know, most restaurants, I sell direct to 3 restaurants here in Fremont County, and you know, most of them are going to do, they can do 8, 10, 12, maybe 20 steaks at a time and do a good job. But that's asking a lot. I mean, if you've never seen 80 pounds of one cut of like New York strip, it's impressive. Like, you got to roll it out on a cart. It's impressive.
I've never seen like 80 pounds of one cut. I'm kind of thinking, I'm not real sure I've ever seen like 80 pounds of meat just out on a cart ready to go. I mean, seeing it all, you know, picking one up from the locker and having it all wrapped in packages is one thing, but seeing it out in the open, you know, yeah, I bet that would be a sight.
And so, you know, the cool part is that when we get down to the cooking portion, there are only 2 people. There's one of the guys on the planning committee with me, the Carr family. They're amazing. They've stuck by me through this whole crazy process of getting this up and going. And Mr. Eric Carr, he randomizes everything. He enters all the contestants' names. He randomizes it. And it's like Kentucky Fried Chicken, man. There ain't anybody that knows the recipe when we're all ready to go. It's him and the chef are the only 2 that know exactly which is which. And
that all the steaks that were number 8 came from your place.
Yep. They do not let me in the kitchen. They don't let anyone in the kitchen. It's very cool to see that they maintain the integrity of it. And it's not just a hokey kind of fun thing. It's actually a pretty serious process.
So you mentioned that it was all direct marketers. So what are the qualifications if somebody isn't already entered and wants to be a part of the Rendezvous City Beef Roundup, either in the Wyoming division or the open division?
Yeah. So, you know, I rely pretty heavily on Facebook and Instagram and stuff, and I kind of seek out the people that are the most active marketers. We just ask that they're exactly that. They're cow calf producers that are finishing, whether, and they don't have to be a cow calf producer, but we would like them to be the owner operator. They're the ones packing the buckets. They're the ones doing the direct marketing. Um, some of them are bigger than others. We have one lady that entered the first year that had some belted Galway from over in Daniel, Wyoming. And she just does a handful every year. Sonia, she's amazing. Her beef is amazing. My father-in-law picked her beef last year
Oh, wow.
over ours. Yeah. Yeah. So now we give him a hard time about his highbrow taste in belted Galway grass-fed beef.
It's almost humbling though, right? Like you think you like certified Angus or extreme Wagyu or whatever, and you're like, no, it just you could
It
do
is.
any breed.
So
Yeah. And that was the other part of, well, anyway, to finish that, but yeah, we just ask that they are the producer.
Yeah.
We don't want any bigger corporate deals getting in there, but they're all family operations.
Oh, that's cool.
Like say in Wyoming, we just do the one particular cut. For the open division, we ask them to send 2 ribeye, 2 New York, 2 sirloin, and 2 pounds of hamburger. And we use that throughout the day. We have a private chef come. We have cooking demonstrations throughout the day. So if you buy your ticket, you can get in and you can learn how to sear the perfect steak, on a grill, in a cast iron pan. We cook some burgers for people throughout the day. And like you're saying, we let them see, maybe is some of that lost on marketing? Like, oh, I did think that all I could eat was certified Angus, from wherever. And they all of a sudden they go, wow, last year we had,
those tough old Mexican roping cows actually taste really good.
Well, you said
yeah,
like that's wild.
yeah, and it's interesting to me that, some people, we had one person, they turned down our offer to come and be part of it because we didn't have a separate grass finished division. But most of the people want to go head to head with and of course it's meant to be fun. We're all friends. Like I have all my swag that I get from other producers. We all trade. I get Christmas cards from some of them. It's cool that we've built this interconnected group of producers that aren't out to get each other. But I trade beef with people while they're there, trade hats, any of that stuff. It's really built a cool community. But it gives producers, the funniest thing, the first year, I had people coming up to me afterwards, like husbands and wives. Well, and they would like corner me as they were leaving. And well, he didn't like the beef that I liked, and I like number 5, but he liked number 7. So, and I was like, whoa, that you guys are gonna have to work that out at home. But it is neat to see people kind of branching out, and there is some of that stigma, especially around here, like, oh, I don't like grass-fed beef. I actually buy the grass-fed that I sell in our retail. I buy from one of my neighbors. He's got a different elevation. He's got different grass types, different grazing seasons, and his grass-fed. I could pull one out, and people, if you couldn't look at it close enough to see the more yellow tints and stuff, they would swear that the marbling is grain finished. And it's absolutely delicious beef. So it's fun to see that part, kind of people opening up and, like you say, maybe they're getting more aware of what they do and don't like to eat.
I think the consumer is rapidly becoming educated on the difference between a forage finished grass fed type production cycle where that animal's in pasture until slaughter date versus the feedlot feedlot finishing model where, yeah, technically we can call it grass fed if it only spends just a little bit of time in the feedlot and it only gets a little bit of grain and mostly forage. I don't buy into that. And I think these events like you've got, I think they're a great way for producers to get their name out, to educate the public that, it's just a taste preference thing. Like some people actually prefer the grass fed to the grain fed, is what it sounds like that you've seen in the results from past competitions.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was, that was kind of the secondary idea behind this, is that that's one of the biggest things that we fight at our farmers market. And like listening to Maggie and Jeremiah, they get the same thing there. So I thought that's awesome that in New Braunfels, Texas, they're fighting the same thing that I fight in Lander, Wyoming. That there is some preconceived notions, and you can tell people, we can tell them our story. My daughters are 6th generation on the place. I'm a 1st generation rancher, but our daughters are 6th generation on the place. And, you can have them really rooting for you. By the end of your whole talk, you got them on your team, and they want you to succeed. But it doesn't necessarily translate to sales, because the next thing you say after you have this whole intimate conversation with them about your lifestyle and how you raise your beef and all of these things, you go, so what can I get you? And they say one of two things, hamburger or ribeye.
Yeah.
Because we just spent all this time talking and getting to know each other, and now they don't want to feel uneducated in front of you. And those are the 2 words that they know.
Right.
I actually took a picture of the one guy that ever came up to my farmer's market booth and said, "Hey, do you have a tongue and an oxtail?" I about fell over backwards, and I had to take his picture and put it on my Facebook, because that doesn't happen. So
some of the reason that doesn't happen is a large part of the public doesn't even know that you can eat those parts of an animal,
Right.
because they've been absent from the grocery stores for 20 or 30 years, or they're
Yeah.
relegated to, an ethnic section of a market that's really hard to find.
Yeah. And I was really bad about that myself. I grew up with my uncle owned some restaurants in Vail, Colorado. So I got to eat some of the better things, and I got to spend my weekends there. And I didn't understand what it takes to make a steak. And I read Killing It a few years ago. I can't remember what her Candace, is it Camish? Anyway, I probably butchered that, but yeah, in drawing attention to some of those things that we no longer use. And now with seeing more head to tail kind of butchering, some of those, we had a guy from South Africa come up to the place looking around, and they will fight you for the oxtail in South Africa. That is one of the most prime, cuts that they can get. And here you tell someone oxtail and their eyes roll back in their head.
You're going to have to forgive me. I can't really specifically recall where that's from, but isn't that like the tail head that's above the pelvis?
Yeah, it's the bulk of the tail. Yeah. I don't know if it's exactly those, which several vertebrae, but yeah, the meatier portion of the tail above the pelvis down. Yeah.
Okay. Well, at least that's the right area to kind of look at.
Yeah, the tail. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wonder
And
why.
I don't know why we've been, it's so I always tell people about the dumbing down of the meat counter. You used to go into a butcher shop and there were dead things hanging around and you could smell the smell, and you pointed at the cuts that you wanted, and you knew which end of that cooler space you couldn't afford to shop in, and which one you didn't care for the flavor and those kind of things. And then at some point that butcher shop went behind the glass, and now it was kind of a case in front of, and you just kind of pointed at. And now it's just this styrofoam plastic wrapped go by as you get a loaf of bread and a can of corn, and you might grab a whatever, a ribeye, because that's the name, as you push your cart by through
And
the
you make sure
store.
it says certified Angus beef because you've heard that once or twice.
Yeah. So I think kind of that dumbing down of the butcher shop is definitely added to that.
I agree. And my because of the books that I've been listening to lately on Audible, The End of the World is Just Beginning by Peter Zehan. Like, it just came out like a month ago, back in June. It's amazing. I haven't even finished it yet, but he's always talking about supply chain. Talks a lot about supply chains and material availability in the future, and it really makes me go down some interesting paths when I have these conversations, thinking about how future supply chains can look and how it's going to affect our operations.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've been talking about lately is, in our own personal direct marketing business, 2019, 2020, we were some of the only game in town, and man, you could sell anything you had in a package. And then all of a sudden, everybody and their brother had a beef for sale or a goat or, whatever on Facebook. And now I'm like you, I kind of see that dwindling, and those, they talk about that term food miles, all of a sudden we're seeing these food miles become more and more expensive. And I think consumers are starting to kind of realize that, especially in the proteins. What's the price of an avocado gonna do in the next year or two? There's no avocados in Wyoming, so those are gonna get fairly expensive. Those kind of things, people are starting to go, yeah, I do need to look another place.
Like the seasonal appropriateness and seasonal availability of foods.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember growing up, you used to not be able to get strawberries in January. That was just
Right.
not a thing. I mean, if you wanted strawberries, wait till summer when they come in. And then when they did show up in the store in January, they're 3 to 4 times the price of the summer strawberries. They tasted half as good. And now that's all there is that same just generic white, barely sweet, not really very juicy, but looks pretty strawberry. That's all we see anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a kick out of listening to Fred Provenza, and I've read the Dorito Effect, and I actually reached out to him after I read Steak to see if he would come and be a celebrity judge at the Beef Roundup. But that's definitely,
Did he say yes?
he's so interested. And I have so little budget to do this on. So there's always that as an issue. But if he's out there listening, we still want you to show up, because I think you would love it.
I
But
think
yeah,
that would be awesome.
yeah, that's a goal for maybe year 4. Maybe we went out a little strong on that one, but we'll get there.
Very cool. Very cool. So I guess I'm kind of back to entry qualification. Like, are you pretty much full for the Wyoming division, or are you still taking entries?
We actually have, including my own business, we have 11 Wyoming entries right now, which is good. It seems like every year somebody has something come up. First year, similar situation. We had somebody that had a fire on the ranch and wasn't able, obviously that takes precedence over what we're doing. So it seems like there's always a little something that comes up. So having one extra, I think that'll work. I will gracefully bow out for the day if need be. But yeah, the Wyoming division has 11 right now. And I know Tasha sent me some emails this morning. We got a couple more open division overnight, where we opened up last year. We limited it to just the western states, kind of Kansas, Texas, South Dakota, West.
Right. West of the dry states where it doesn't rain very much.
Yeah, the dry. Yeah, there you go. And we had 13 entries from 12 different states, and the guys from Colorado won it. Mountain View Meats, which was so cool. They now have a processing facility here in Wyoming as well. So I think they're gonna enter the Wyoming division this year. But yeah, we just we'll take. I think we've talked about limiting it to about 20, 25 in the open division. We have a little shorter format for that because we can't use the school's huge cafeteria for the entire day. So we have a celebrity chef show up for that to cook all of those. We only cook 2 of their steaks as part of the competition. In the open division, 1 of your New Yorks and 1 of your ribeyes gets cooked. The New York, you get salt, pepper, and fire. That's it.
That's all a good steak should need.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had some people come in the first year and they were like, wow, we want a sous vide and we want to do this. I said, listen, okay, come on, guys. If you got to have like the Japanese sea salt or whatever, the secret sauce to make your steak good, then it becomes a cooking competition and maybe not a tasting competition. So we've limited it to that. We are sponsored by High Mountain Seasoning here in Riverton. They're awesome. They do so much for us. They got us these amazing Camp Chef grills for last year. They put in seasoning in all the VIP bags. You get an awesome swag bag that's a cooler. If you just get a general admission ticket, you get a little cooler bag so that you can walk around and buy beef from all over everywhere. It's one of the
that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah. We thought it's a cool for me personally, because I'm kind of a foodie. I thought, man, how cool is that? Like you can get steak from all over the state in one place on one day. So we do that. But yeah, High Mountain, they sponsor it. They give us some seasoning. Hopefully by next year, we're working with them to have our own, the secret sauce rendezvous rub maybe for the steaks. But when you get to the ribeye round, that's when we kind of add the razzle dazzle. We put a little seasoning on there. We give you some different flavored smoke and let those kind of pop a little bit. But you got to get through that New York round first.
Okay. So if somebody wanted to enter that open division, how would they do that?
So for right now, by the time this comes out, you can go to Rendezvous City Beef Roundup.com, and we should have a button on there that will have the entry link. And I think that link is actually up and working right now. I know we're waiting on the ticket link for the VIP tickets, but both of those should be ready by the end of the week. You can click on that. It has a link that goes right to Tasha or myself, and we will couple simple little questions. Where are you from? What are you doing with your beef? Anything special that sets you apart? And we get a little bio on them, and you're entered. Your meat is your entry fee. It has to be anyone that's out of state. They have to ship USDA inspected and stamped in the original package beef. That's our only stipulation since we sell tickets. They treat us kind of like a restaurant. So where it's coming across state lines, we do have to, that's our one stipulation.
That's
but
fair.
Yeah. So you can have, and we don't put any stipulation on thickness. We just ask for 2 of each cut. Some of that meat we use for demonstrations. Some of that meat we use for feeding our volunteers. Some of it we auction off as a fundraiser in the evening. We try and keep the kind of the highest scored ones as your own personal beef tour. You can buy the beef tour.
And that helps fund the event.
Yeah. So we give away some really nice Gist belt buckles. This year, we actually have a sponsor that is providing fuel cards for our Wyoming producers so that they can travel here if they're outside of Fremont County.
Very
It's
cool.
been really cool to see how many people have come together to support this.
That sounds awesome. Oh, I kind of want to ask who the celebrity chef is, but I have a
Yeah.
feeling that you either don't want to tell me or I've never heard of him. So how could other states and other regions start to replicate your event?
You know, I think that's kind of another goal. That's a secondary goal of ours. Last year we had the people from North Dakota showed up, people from Washington, a couple from Nebraska. We had several of the producers show up to see how we're doing this. And that's one thing that we would like to see is people start taking that back to their state and replicating it. You know, I think it's actually a little more straightforward now that we've done it. We've got a couple of years under our belt. I wouldn't be scared to try and walk somebody else through it, you know, via the phone or something.
Yeah.
But I think having them here and getting a feel for it, eventually this may grow into like a 2-day, you know, like garlic festival or shrimp festival type thing. Some of those more established festivals that are around food. Right now, one day is enough. It takes 364 days to put on the one day. But really, if there's a few more progressive producers in their area, and you have there's a few hallmark things that I think you'd need to have. Obviously, a super huge kitchen with a good staff is a great start. I think somebody can go back and do some promoting. I mean, can you imagine how big this would be like if it blew up in Texas?
Oh, it'd be insane. The
Yeah,
first year there'd be like 7 people, but the second year it'd be just nuts.
yeah. You'd have to limit them. You'd have to put a deeper criteria on it. Right now, we're just happy to get people to, if they know where Riverton, Wyoming is, we're excited.
Where is Riverton, Wyoming?
Almost dead center in the middle of the state. We're
Mhm.
just a little ways northwest of center and a couple hours from Yellowstone.
Why? So what is Riverton a rendezvous city, and why do they call it the rendezvous city?
It is the Rendezvous City. We have several beautiful statues that commemorate that. The mountain men and the natives would have a lot of rendezvous here
Mhm.
back in the day. And we actually have a very large mountain man rendezvous festival still. I want to say, I'm not even going to try and quote because one of my neighbors is one of their reenactors and he'll kill me if I butcher it, but they have been going for decades. And they now have billboards, radio commercials it was just a couple weeks ago. Normally we're cutting hay when the rendezvous happens, but yeah, they just commemorated a big anniversary. We also have a large balloon festival that was just 2 weeks ago, I want to say. Balloon festival, car show, and that it's kind of a rendezvous as well. So yeah, it was the Rendezvous City, and we thought, you know, you go to Kentucky and you go on a bourbon tour.
Yep.
Go to Southern California and you go on a wine tour.
Yeah.
Why not
Come to
come
Kansas, you can go on a wheat field tour.
yeah.
Do you
Just
really
go-
go on wheat filters?
Well, they have a wheat tour that they go out and scout wheat, but that was more of a joke than
Oh,
anything else.
sorry.
just go east a mile and north a mile, east a mile, north a mile. You'll see all kinds of wheat, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of Kansas that's like that, all broken up, divided into square land. I don't live there, thankfully.
But yeah, we thought, you know, why not come if you're in beef country? Why not take a beef tour? So
I can totally see this taking off. I'm pretty excited for you guys. That's
oh,
cool.
thank you.
So, are you from Riverton? Have you always been there?
No, my wife's family is from here. I was born just over the line in Colorado, just north of Fort Collins, and I got to Wyoming as soon as I could. This is definitely home.
I mean, I can imagine there's a small demographic change and population density change between Fort Collins and Riverton.
Yeah.
So tell me about, so you're from Fort Collins. Where'd you go to college, and how did you end up in Riverton, I guess is what I'm asking.
So, after high school, man, I knew that college would be like a waste of my time, money, and their time. And I was gone. I was out. I went all over the country. I was a horseshoer. I was training horses. I was doing anything. If you asked me if I was ready to go, I was already loaded up, man. I was out. And long story short, I settled back in southern Colorado, and I was riding some horses, and one of the guys I rode horses for said, I have a ranch up in Wyoming, and my ranch manager's getting a little older and probably shouldn't be riding the colts. Would you be interested in going up and helping them gather for a few weeks? And I thought, wow, it takes that long to gather, huh? And so I still had enough free spirit in me that I was loaded up, man. I was ready to get up there, and came back for a couple years in a row, and ultimately ended up marrying that ranch manager's daughter. And she and I have taken over her grandparents' place. And so we live on the farm. We raise all of our grass hay for our cattle, and my father-in-law lives at the ranch, and it's about 35 miles east of Riverton, and we're 35 miles west of Riverton on the farm. So it was love.
So just make sure I'm understanding it. You got a little farm east of town, and then a lot of ranch ground west of town.
Other way around. Yeah.
Okay.
Ranch is east, farm is west. Yep.
Okay.
So
what kind of cows do you have?
So we run an F1 cross of Hereford, Red Angus, and Black Angus. And that's kind of so the ranch that we're on is about 1/8 of what the ranch my wife's grandfather managed. My wife's grandfather and grandmother met way back when. He was from here. He was from over in Lander. His grandfather had homesteaded in Lander after coming up from Texas on a cattle drive. And he picked his plot, and he proved up on his ground. And that was when the Hancocks became established in Wyoming. And when he and his wife met, he had his saddle and bedroll and a teepee, and she had her pots and pans and a sewing machine. And now we have a 500 head cow calf operation, and we put up all our own hay and try and keep it going every day.
Awesome. So what's the grazing base like on the ranch, and maybe talk about how you graze your cattle? Like okay, so what kind of terrain are you in? Because I know Wyoming is wildly varied. I mean, there's short grass plains and prairies, and there's high mountains with maybe, if you're lucky, 200 pounds an acre of forage.
Yeah. So we have a very unique setting. We're up against what's called the Beaver Rim. And so at the floor of the rim, we're in a common allotment. We have 4 or 5 other places out with us. Our summer,
like a grazing pool type situation.
Yeah, our summer pasture is about 56 square miles. And then we have, and then our heifers are across the road. And they run our first calf heifers, they run in about 22 sections. And we run by ourselves there. So it's kind of nice as a heifer pasture that we can keep them separated and kind of know what they're bred to. But yeah, on the ranch side of the road, we're out in a common allotment, but then we have a winter pasture. Listening to one of your shows, and you were talking about having to work on your winter feed. We're very, very blessed that way. We have a winter pasture that we can run about 275, 300 head all winter on just some lick tubs. 2 winters ago was the first time anyone ever remembers no, I'm sorry, 3 winters ago now. We had to abandon the pasture. You couldn't see the greasewood. I mean, the snow drifts were so high.
Okay.
The cattle couldn't get to water. Took us 3 days to drive them 14 miles back to the house. It was pretty brutal. But other than that, no one can ever remember having to have come out of that pasture before winter was over. So
you're like the rare operation in Wyoming that's not feeding hay for 270 days a year. Is that what I'm hearing?
yeah, yeah, we do. We feed a little hay here at the farm. We get the older cows that are still they just need a little more groceries, and they'll have 1 or 2 more calves.
Hey, I'm not judging for feeding hay.
Yeah,
okay?
no.
A little bit every once in a while. Like
Yeah.
I am going to judge you if you feed hay 270 days
Yeah.
out of the year.
No, we're really fortunate. I mean, we still have a cowboy outfit. We can get them through on very little. Like I say, we bring the first calf heifers, the replacement heifers, next year's first calf heifers, and then a handful of these older cows that are, they'll still have a good calf and raise a good calf if we can kind of help them with some groceries through the winter. But we're pretty low maintenance, high tolerance.
I like it. So I'm kind of curious as to how the common allotments work. I don't have a whole lot of experience or knowledge about them. So can you talk about how yours works?
Yeah. So actually that one great big pasture is split up into 2 allotments. And so back to the beaver rim, right? So where we are at the ranch is anywhere from 4,000 feet down around where the ranch house is. And then when you hit the base of the rim, you go up to about 7,200 feet in about 150 feet in. Yeah, it literally shoots
Straight up.
right up out of the ground. There's like 3 places that you can safely get up and down. It's all old uranium mining country.
Imagine there's probably a lot of places you don't want to let your horse drink the water.
So it does turn into a little bit of an issue in a dry year. Yeah, some of the springs, if they'll get a good flush in the summer or in the early spring and kind of freshen that water up, you're all right. But occasionally we'll see an older cow or a younger heifer that's been camped on a kind of stagnant water, and she'll start getting some blindness and some weird stuff. But yeah, they don't glow or anything.
Contrary. No heavy metal
Yeah.
toxicity issues.
Yeah, every once in a great while, like I say, we'll see last summer was pretty dry and we had to keep them moving around. This summer's been really nice, had a lot of early rain and stuff. But yeah, so that beaver rim is the dividing line between the 2 allotments, and there's 3 of us down below the rim, and we have a little bit of different turnout dates, and it's kind of based on your AUM capacity, and there's a few determining factors into that. But we have a couple of smaller grazing allotments and pastures that we use when we turn out in the spring. So our turnout dates on the allotment are June 1st to December 1st. Everybody in our allotment ends December 1st. A couple of them start like May 15th. I think the one guy is even like May 1st with just a handful. It's kind of odd how some of the old adjudicated rights and stuff are tied to each of the little, it's tied to adjudicated property, right? You have
Right.
kind of the first right of refusal to that grazing right that surrounds you. And so some of them are just different rights. But yeah, we all run about the same number out there. I think the lower place is set for 1580 or 1620 AUMs, and then there's a handful up on top. So yeah, we're really fortunate that we get to turn out about June 1st when everything's pretty well branded up, and ours are pretty well located. You know, you're always going to have a handful of hammerheads that go, and it is immediately as soon as you open the gate, they're on the other side.
Right.
You know, you always have that. And so in the fall, everybody kind of trades off fall riding, and everybody's on the phone in a trailer. You know, somebody might call and, hey, these guys up on top said that you've got 2 up at Stampede and I got 5, so I'll bring yours down, and I got 1 over here. And so we all kind of mix and mingle. It used to be way back when there was no fences, my wife's grandfather always would get a tear in his eye and say, it's so sad to see this country getting so fenced in. And I'd think, it's 56 square miles. What are you talking? You know, it's like sticking your toe in the ocean for the first time. You go, whoa, this is massive. And they proposed a new fence, the BLM did 2 years ago, and I kind of teared up. I thought, no, we're still kind of cowboys out here. Let's leave it alone. But they used to go out up until the 80s. They went out and took out a wagon, and there's still one bunch of guys that are real hardcore up on top. They still go out on the wagon and they put out the ropes. It's only a few days now, but it used to be weeks and months.
I think that that's really good that there are groups keeping some of those traditions alive and still doing it that way, the way it's been done for 100 years. That's not to say that there isn't something to be said about progress and doing things a little more efficiently these days with modern machinery and technology. So when you come off the mountain, like, I guess I'm kind of wondering, it's just 56 square miles in one pasture, and you've got you and several other operators. It doesn't sound like the cattle commingle, and it doesn't sound like there's range riders out herding them around or doing any kind of grazing control on them.
No, everybody kind of takes care of their own during the summer. We get out, Angela's grandfather always, my wife, her grandfather always figured that they did the best when you polished a lot of leather. And so we get out and we ride on them, like I say, this year, we really kicked in the riding here the last couple of weeks because we did have a ton of moisture. We had several 1 and 2 inch rainstorms in early spring, really filled up a lot of the waters. And now that those are kind of drying out, we kind of use the water as much as or more than the grazing to move things around. But yeah, we all do run together, and that was part of the consideration when we started our beef business, is like, what do we do to make ourselves stand out? And we couldn't guarantee that it was a purebred. We couldn't guarantee that it was a Wagyu cross, so we kept filtering out what we could do, or what we couldn't do, kept pointing us in what we could do as to how we would run our marketing business. But yeah, it really does. It depends on the year. Dry years, you're out riding a lot more, keeping them on fresh feed, fresh water. But yeah, we all run together. Some of those cows are up on top. Some of the guys from up on top, they're down below, and it makes for good neighbors.
How much pushback do you think you would get if you wanted to do something completely different? And I guess the basis of this question is, how much of your decision on what type of cattle to run is based on allotment constraints or pool, or what other people in the pool are doing or what they would accept?
There's a great story about my father-in-law with that. So a guy, one of our friends that's total city guy, he's awesome. He always says that if John Wayne would have wanted to study one of his characters, he would have studied my father-in-law. He's a mountain, he's this great big guy. He could ride anything that bucked, he could rope anything that ran, he's that guy. And he switched back. It was all Hereford country forever when it was the ranch that his dad managed for a man named Clarence Greaves. Hereford was king. That was all there was on the range. And as the Hereford started getting phased out and more people bought up portions of the range, it was, then they started going to more Angus types and that kind of stuff. And so when the Angus got really deeply rooted in the range and everybody had black everything, my father-in-law looked around and he could see the traits that weren't coming out in those Angus cattle that were prevalent in the Herefords. And he said, we've got to go back, and our weaning weights have gone down and there's some different health issues that are coming up, so he was really brilliant and looked around and said, we got to start putting some of that back in. And so he went and he bought a trailer load of Hereford bulls. He turned them out, and I mean, he just barely pulled back into the house, and here came the neighbors. Boy, they were hot. And Jennifer, she was gonna run him up a tree, and she started in on, I hope none of those Hereford blankety blanks breed any of my black cows, and on and on. And he said, well, I hope none of them breed any of your black cows too. And that was the end of the conversation. So, but it is, we're really fortunate that everybody out there, we know what works on our range, and most of the guys are kind of shopping for bulls at very reputable bull dealers. You'll see a lot of similarities in the cattle. I've personally bought some cattle from a couple of the different neighbors that all run on the same place, and go through my feed program and finish in the beef. And I mean, they all did exceptional. They're so closely bred. But yeah, I mean, if we turned out a bunch of Coriani bulls or something, I think probably we'd have some phone calls real quick. Might have some Coriani steers in a few days.
Or
Yeah.
I was thinking of doing something really wacky, like turn out some Brahma.
Yeah. I think one year somebody leased a little piece to a guy with a bunch of bucking bulls.
Oh,
Yeah. And of course, the fence wasn't even a suggestion. So they were out on the range like next day, and they got back a few bucking steers, and that was the end of that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. You can head and heel a bucking bull and make it a steer pretty quick.
Guy down the road has some. Maybe I'd like to see him do that one day.
I would much rather have a baldy calf than a bucking bull half black Angus. Yeah.
So what have you had any wrecks up there with the common allotment that you want to talk about?
Not that I want to talk about. No.
Okay, that's fair.
No, I mean, there's always some management issues that we run into every year, just with the different things that come up, or BLM wants to do some new study and somebody doesn't want them over on their place, and somebody does want them. There's always a few little deals that we run into, but really for the most part, we're all professionals, and we're all kind of in it for the same deal. We're even related to some of them, and so it kind of works out. We did have one year we had a guy, he brought this Palomino horse out, and we still cut cattle out in the open. When we gather in the fall, you cut your brand out. And there's places it's very romantic to me because I didn't grow up doing that. So there's days where I'm horseback all day and we cut cattle out in the open, and the old guys tell the stories about when they used to cut the horses out in the open. When the ranches had all come together the last day headed home, they would cut the horses out in the open, and they said that got pretty fast. But we're out cutting, and this guy's horse,
just for clarity, you're sorting yours from other people, not like cutting testicles. And
okay. Yeah. No, we're just out sorting our pairs off of your pairs and their pairs, and everybody kind of heads home. And the day before, me and this guy were walking down the 2-rut road trying to catch up to the herd, just talking, and his horse kicked mine. And we both looked at each other like, what was that? It was just totally random. We'd been walking down the road for like 10 minutes. So then the next day he rides the same horse. He was a little goofy. And we're sitting there cutting. It was a fairly good bunch, 150, 200 head of cows along the fence by the highway. And we get kind of done, and everybody's kind of going through and sending their guy in to look for anything they might have missed on their first trip through. And he comes over to visit with me, and that horse wheels and kicks my horse. He kicked my wife's horse the day before that I was riding. He wheels and kicks this one of my best horses. I was so hot. I grabbed my reins and I was going to hit him on the butt, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the horse saw me rear back, and he wheeled around, and I hit him right across the face with the reins. I was like, at that point, at that point, there's no backing down. Like, you gotta So yeah, things got heated real quick, but we're still friends.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, what advice would you have? I guess, what advice do you wish you had before you started managing that ranch? The first day you're managing that ranch, what's the one piece of advice you wish you would have had?
Oh, man. I guess, my wife's grandfather always said we've always got to leave a little back for next year. And I think we still have my father-in-law that really calls the shots, but we kind of execute the things on a day-to-day basis. And I think we've heeded that warning, and we've left a little back every year, and we never overgrazed. His famous saying was, you can't starve a profit out of a cow. And I think
very true.
Yeah, I think we've lived by that. And I was fortunate enough to know when to shut up. And it was purely by dumb luck, I promise you. And I think we've kind of lived by that, and it's served us very well. This year, I mean, we literally have grass down the 2 ruts in the road. It's just been amazing. It all hit right at the right time. And the range is it looks outrageous. But I think heeding that, not to starve a profit out of a cow, has sure served us well.
Very cool. Very cool. Is there anything else that we forgot to ask you today?
I mean, if you want to hear more about the beef roundup, we can do that. But yeah, it's whatever you guys have time for. I enjoy just visiting.
So who have been some of your most influential mentors?
Most recently, my father-in-law, for sure. Like I say, I didn't come from a ranching background. I had a horse background, and that was part of how I got here. But learning some of the ranching side of it from him has definitely been huge. But my mom, growing up, she was amazing. The things that she put up with to even keep me alive was pretty unprecedented.
Oh, I'm sure my mom's got plenty of stories. And I know my dad has some because he's told me a few of them.
Yeah, but now I'm fascinated by this whole, there's so many variables that play into it that I tend to think of myself more as a student of it now than definitely nowhere near an expert by any means. Still a student of this whole thing called ranching.
Hmm.
I think that's a perpetual state. I think that a lot of people that would call themselves an expert maybe still have a little bit of learning to do. I try to stay humble and keep educating myself, and it's a journey. I'm always trying to learn more about my forage, my grasses, the interaction between, the cattle and the soil microbes, and why they eat what they eat, which is why I love talking to guys like Fred Provenza. Why did that cow go eat the willow tree? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I didn't know willow had aspirin in it. So that's, I listened to that and I think, man, I had to like go and get the dictionary after I listened to that interview to look up half of the stuff they were talking about. So it's very humbling to know how little I know.
Don't feel bad. Every once in a while, I have to grab my phone while we're doing one of these and look up a word. Sometimes more than that.
Well, and like listening to Mike Calicrate, he's actually one of our speakers this year at the Beef Roundup.
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that I wanted to get to come right from the get-go. We've had we've had some pretty amazing speakers, and I'm always people are like, how did you get them to come and talk? I go, well, I called and I asked.
Yeah.
How did you get so and so on your podcast?
Yeah.
I sent him a really nice email and asked politely. That's how.
Yeah. So, but and that was listening to guys like that were, he was right there with his finger in Tyson's chest saying, this isn't right what you guys are doing. And when I visited with Mike about coming up and talking, I got really fortunate in two things. He has some old rodeo buddies that are from right here that actually neighbor with us. So that helped. And I said, I'd con one of them into buying him a beer. And, I said that was kind of the thing about the beef roundup is that I think we need to connect at the consumer level and really take everything else out of the picture, because there is so much misleading Black Angus, Wagyu, all of these things that people hear all of the time. And he was so cool to talk to because he said, you're absolutely right. There's legislation has failed us and some of these other things that we thought maybe would hold up have not. And he said, I think you're on to something. That's kind of the last real true connection we can make is right to the consumer.
As I like to say, shake the hand that feeds you. And it's all about forging that connection between the people that make the food systems work, the food producers that make the systems work, rather than just the consumers, which is the top layer. And we have to bridge that connection. So I'm kind of wondering, what percentage of your beef are you direct marketing? 500 cow calf operation, I mean, that's a lot of poundage. How much of that are you direct marketing every year?
So this year we were shooting for 80 to 100, and I think I've kind of backed that off a little bit. I think we'll for sure hit 60 by the end of the year. Fall, it always seems to pick up a little bit, so I'm carrying a few extras right now. We're going to be in that 60 to 80 head range this year.
Okay.
Yeah, so when excuse me, the first year, I thought this was crazy that we were going to do 20. And one of those weird things of COVID hit, and fortunately we had the places spoke for, and we had the feed, we obviously had the cattle, and it really catapulted our business 5 years ahead, because we're marketing beef in beef country. We're selling sand at the seashore kind of scenario, and everybody and their brother's got a beef. I didn't really dream it would be that we would get to this level, but yeah, we do 3 restaurants. We distribute all around the state, and now we're even getting some down into Colorado, and had one to go to Virginia the other day, so that was cool. But yeah,
Very cool.
I think we've kind of topped out at that, though, because what we ended up doing is we had 3 areas on our farm that weren't productive for one another, too rocky, too subby to hay, these kind of things. And we've started kind of grazing those, and we've got them all refenced and got water to them and all of that. And I think that's kind of the maximum capacity of our farm, because we keep all of ours out grazing the whole time. The majority of them we do give just a little bit of grain, kind of go back to the way grandma and grandpa did it. And we give a little corn, oats, and barley, because that's what we have that's grown readily available to us. We have a lot of malt barley, a little bit of corn, handful of oats around here. So, we can get a truckload or 2 of each grain every year. So we do give them a little grain twice a day. But yeah, I think that's kind of going to be without acquiring another place or another set of hands to help with that. I think we've kind of reached our maximum capacity there.
Is that just because of the time required to get the animal to processor, pack it, ship it, deal with the customers? It's just that's kind of the limit of the time commitment you're willing to put in, or do you just think your market saturated?
A little bit of the market saturation, but also I tried leasing a little place across the street, and it just, without us being able to control where we're grazing them, I don't know that I want to. Everything around us is big. I mean, we have a 330-acre farm, and we're one of the smaller farms on the block, so to speak. So without, like, that was part of why we started the direct marketing of beef. It was for us to add any size. It was going to be a multi-million-dollar commitment somewhere, some way, right? And so I didn't want to be a truck driver. My wife chose to retire from her career and stay home. So we kept filtering out what we could and couldn't do. And the direct marketing kind of fell in our lap as to, why don't we take these bottom end cattle that when the buyer shows, if we sold on the video auction, there was always that pin that the buyer sorted off. If we took them to the sale barn, there was always that frozen eared and frozen tailed calf that somebody stole for $60.
Yep.
And that was kind of our conclusion, that, we need to start this direct marketing. But now, like say, reaching that kind of saturated point, we don't. Taking more to the processor every month isn't that big of a deal. It's just throwing one more in the trailer. By the time you get to that level, you're already packing a few buckets, pack one more, it's not that big a deal. But there's very few places that are close enough here that are kind of small acreages that I could lease, because I always wanted them. I hated going by the feedlot and seeing them all standing there getting corn shoved down their throat. And I'm not anti-feedlot. I understand there is a necessary component to that, but I thought, if we're going to try and raise a premium product, how do we do that? And marketing grass-fed beef in Riverton, Wyoming is pretty daunting task. So, we give them a little grain, and that kind of produced the flavor that people here were willing to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I actually have to get going. I've gotten a couple more texts about that fire situation.
I saw you turning. I'm like, there has to be a fire going on.
Well, I don't think it's a critical situation, but it's definitely something I need to go pay attention to today.
Please do. Yeah. Yeah.
So anything we want to wrap up with, Tyler?
Just that there should be, if you would like to come and see how we're doing the beef roundup, please go to the Rendezvous City Beef Roundup.com and come out. It's a fun day. It's literally everything beef. I'm gonna have to hit you up to come and be a speaker one day.
Maybe I'd really enjoy that.
Yeah, please. Yeah, we'll get you out here.
I have very, very reasonable speaking and appearance fees.
Perfect. We can maybe afford that. But yeah, there's something for everybody. We have a wine tasting and pairing class, which is always a big one. People come out and they can try wine with different types of beef. Like I say, we have a private chef that will show you how to get the perfect sear on your steak. There's really all the way up to Mike Calicrate coming to talk about his new food villages. There's literally something for everybody, and there's no real agenda other than beef is awesome.
Yep. And so it's Saturday, September 10th. Is that, because I just looked it up. Is that the right date?
Yes, that's this year's date.
Okay.
In Riverton, Wyoming at Central Wyoming College. It is one of the most beautiful campuses you'll ever see. It's there in the cultural center. And like I say, there's something for everybody. And it's really fun because there's no agenda. We're not trying to sell you the newest, latest, greatest drug, whatever. Or it's just a bunch of really good people. And I'm always surprised at how many young people there are there that are doing what we're doing. I don't consider myself young anymore, but we're not old ranchers by any means. But yeah, it's really cool. I know people call every year afterwards and say, I made a connection with so-and-so, and now our beef is going here or going there. So it's really a fun day because there isn't any overreaching agenda. We just get together and eat a bunch of beef.
Celebrate beef.
Correct.
Celebration of beef. I like it.
So, well, thank you.
Well, thank you for your time today, Tyler. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Good luck on the fire.
Yeah, we'll go see what's going on. It's probably not going to be anything, but y'all have a great week.
Yeah.